at that time, like, I didn't even accept the fact that we needed an organ transplant. I was just like, she's going to be healed. Like, we're going to pray against this, and some miracle is going to happen. Like, we're not going to need an organ. Like,
Yeah.
it's my daughter. She's fine. Like, she'll be okay. And
Yeah.
honestly, I don't think either of us, like, accepted the idea of organ transplant until the doctor was like, no, like, we've waited. She's not healing. We need one now.
All right. Well, this is exciting. We're excited for you guys to be here with us live. It's our first live interview, as we said. So you guys are very brave to be our very first. And I think it's going to be amazing. So for those of you that are just joining, and perhaps you've read their story, perhaps you know them personally, perhaps you do not know them personally and have not read their story. So if you can just start out, Alyssa and Bryant, if you can share a little bit about yourselves and just give a brief introduction.
I'm Bryant Andrews. This is Alyssa. Of course, we have two kids, BJ and Baylor. I'm a school teacher here in Oklahoma City.
Really? Okay. I just stay at home now with Baylor. I used to work in the legal field as a paralegal, and it's pretty much our lives now. We just go to work, come home. So, yeah,
Well,
that's all I got right now.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think a lot of people are going to know your story, or they're going to read about you afterwards too. So they'll get the introduction. But if you can also just share now a brief summary of Baylor's story and your family's story and going through the liver transplant.
So in January of last year, we kind of noticed some changes in Baylor's appetite, and that's what sparked this whole thing. And I was like, man, she's just really not eating. Something's going on. And so I contacted her pediatrician, and they just said, you know, it's a virus. Let's just hold out. And it got to the third week, and I was like, okay, my child is really not eating, like, at all. So we need to figure something out. So I got an appointment for a second opinion, and we actually didn't make it to that appointment. And I had to take her to the ER because she had vomited, and she was very lethargic. And so we go to the ER, and within like 2 hours, they're like, your daughter's liver is failing, and we need to have a transplant. And we're like, I don't understand, like, what's going on whatsoever. Like, we never even really thought about, like, organ transplants before, or liver transplants, nor did I even understand how much your liver affected your whole body. Like, so we went through some hospital stuff here, and then they transferred us out of state to Houston, Texas, and that's where we received, her liver transplant. And I don't know how to turn my volume off on my computer. Will you go ahead? Sorry.
She received a liver transplant in Houston,
Okay.
and post-transplant, we had to stay out of state. I believe it was at least
Total, we were there for
6 weeks.
Yeah.
About
like
6 weeks.
days.
So we were away from home, away from family, away from work, away from anything that is normal. We were just displaced, you know. That's the best way to put it. We're just literally displaced in a new world, new environment, and it was literally just us four. So yeah, everything we were learning, we were actually learning as it happened.
Right on the. So what happened in those first few moments when you learned that Baylor needed a liver transplant? What were your first thoughts, and as you come to realize what this actually meant? What was your process and what you were thinking and feeling?
Yeah. Well, he wasn't in the room initially. He hadn't got off work yet. And I was like, we'll just go to the ER, like, figure out some medicines or whatever we need to happen, and then we'll go from there. And my sister was in the room with me, and I just remember, like, looking at her like, I can't even comprehend, like, what's going on right now. Like, I just thought my daughter was, like, dehydrated. And at that time, like, I didn't even accept the fact that we needed an organ transplant. I was just like, she's going to be healed. Like, we're going to pray against this, and some miracle is going to happen. Like, we're not going to need an organ. Like,
Yeah.
It's my daughter. She's fine. Like, she'll be okay. And honestly, I don't think either of us like accepted the idea of organ transplant until the doctor was like, no, like, we've waited. She's not healing. We need one now. Like, and I think finally then it was like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. Like, I don't know.
I like for myself, since I wasn't in the room to hear what the doctors were saying. So once I finally actually got to the hospital, they tell me, hey, your daughter needs a liver transplant, or your daughter's liver is failing. That's the first thing I heard. So in my mind, initially, I was thinking, okay, so what medicine are we taking? Does she need a shot? What kind of minor procedure is about to take place? Never in a million years would I have thought that she needed a liver transplant or that we were actually be sent somewhere else. I just knew everything could be done here in Oklahoma City.
And we just thought it was like, okay, we'll stay the night and then maybe we'll go home tomorrow. Like, that's really what we kind of thought. Like, we had no clue at all.
I had full intentions of going to coach my basketball game that evening because I thought we were, I would get some news to say, okay, she's stable, you're okay, she can take care of this. I'll go to the basketball game and I'll be back afterwards. That was definitely not the case.
Yeah. So it sounds like you had to kind of take it step by step, and really it was a learning process too, because, even if I were to think about coming into the situation, I wouldn't know anything as well. Just like you guys said, there was so much to learn, so many questions to ask, and thinking it can happen right away or in that hospital at home as well. So there's just so many unknowns going into it. And how could you put your life on hold for those, you said it was how many weeks? It was 6 weeks, right?
So started January 19th, and we didn't actually return back to Oklahoma City till March 15th. And so we were super lucky. Like, my boss at the time was so accommodating. He actually paid for Bryant's flight down to Houston. He was like, don't worry, like, whatever you need, I'm here for you. He has been since I first started hiring him. Like, literally, God set you up in my life 2 years before this happened because he knew I needed a boss like you for this time. Like, it was crazy. And his situation, he teaches at a smaller school in Oklahoma City, and it's more like family than it is like a public school. And so the people there were super accommodating to him. They gifted him tons of like hours so that he wasn't going unpaid. And like I've said all along, like, we've just had crazy amount of support through this situation where like we've never been alone through it, and we've never necessarily had to worry about work, or we had tons of people provide financially for us through like GoFundMe accounts and stuff. And so like separating financially and being away from work was not even like a stress for us whatsoever. It was, I mean, it's amazing to not have to worry about that kind of thing. So we were truly able to just focus on Baylor and Baylor's health.
Oh, that's so good. That's such a blessing during that time to just focus on her and your family. I want to ask a little bit about BJ. So at the time he was he 3 or 4? 4 years old, right?
He was 4.
4. So what did he understand of the situation? And you had said as well in your story that he went to your mom, Alyssa, to stay. What was his reaction? And I mean, as a 4-year-old, it's hard to comprehend everything, but you say he's quite an amazing little boy, so I'd love to hear a little more about him and his reaction.
Well, BJ is extremely smart, so he was able to kind of pick up on some things that typically a 4-year-old wouldn't be able to pick up on. He knew that Baylor was a little more than just, sick or her stomach didn't feel well. He knew that something was going on, but he just understood that he had to be a big brother in that moment. So he was very gentle with Baylor. He was extremely accommodating. So when we kind of told him, hey, we're going to have to go stay at grandma's house for a little bit, he didn't complain. He didn't argue. He just knew it was something that he had to do for Baylor and the situation at the time. So he handled it way better than we ever expected him to.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, we look forward to meeting him a little bit later too. We said at the end of this interview we'll get to meet both BJ and Baylor, so we look forward to saying hello to them. So another question is, as Baylor's condition worsened when you were in the hospital in Texas, you said that she regressed back to infant stage and that she had really no consciousness of you and her surroundings. And that you, Alyssa, said that it pained you to the core. And as every mother can only imagine what that would feel like and not being able to console your only child, was there anything that could console you during that time and the pain of seeing your child going through that time for both of you? And I'm sure both of you processed it a little differently. So I'd love to hear a little more how you processed just seeing the pain of the situation.
For me, I'm gonna cry because it's so hard to think about, but I just really dug deep into music and like just listening to songs, like Christian songs, the Christian music, and I asked my friends, my two accountability partners, Mandy and Maddie, like they have no idea, like. So anyways, I just asked people, like, can you send me like words or songs or something? So constantly, him and I both, we would just sit with one headphone in and we just have music or verses like playing in our phones, because it was so hard, and you almost had to distract yourself a little bit from what was going on, in order to keep yourself like in tune with God, so that you weren't choosing negative feelings or feeling sorry for yourself or anger or
Yeah.
but yeah, like honestly, and literally it would be like minute by minute, like we would get on the phone and say, hey, I need you to pray for this specifically right now because this is what I'm struggling with in this moment, like. And so that's really what held me together. And we had our family members we would talk to and they would send us stuff, and then we had like our core Bible study group and our accountability partners, and like they're pretty much who held us together through the whole thing. Like I don't, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. How about you, Bryant?
For myself, it was kind of the same thing. Constant playing of music, small group of friends. For the most part, people who know me know that I'm always laughing, always trying to have a good time. So it was just friends, my really close friends, who knew at certain moments of the day, hey, let me send him a funny joke or a YouTube link or something, just to kind of take his mind off of everything that was going on, or just a phone call to say, hey, how you guys doing? Is there anything we can do? They knew we would always say, no, we got it. We can handle it.
Yeah.
But just in that moment to hear that someone cared about you, someone was trying to reach out to help, was amazing.
Yeah. Wow. It just shows in moments like this how important your support system and the community around you really is, and how that is what consoled you during this time. And I was actually going to ask about that, your community, and you've answered it right here, how important that is to you and what they mean to you. And even for, let's say, those of us who would be around another friend, what would be the most important that we could do? And I think you've answered that as well. It's just to be there, support, like you said, send messages and add in humor as well. I know at one point you had said that you just had to laugh at, I think, Bryant, you were the one that fell asleep even with the doctors, and you just had to laugh at it. Sometimes you just have to laugh and
Yeah.
and not take it so seriously. So that's great to see in your story as well. But let's go back as well to the moment you heard that there was a potential liver match. And I know that you had written that sometimes it still cannot be a match, but what is the process, for those of us that don't know, what is it, the process that the likelihood of it would match or wouldn't in that case? Do you know that probability?
I don't know like a percentage per se, but They don't really call you and tell you unless there's like some chance that it could work.
Yeah.
They still have to run tests as far as like blood types and what this liver might have gone through pre
Risk or high risk.
Yeah, is there a risk? Does this person have like
any prior
any
trauma,
diseases or
Yeah.
so there's just a series of tests that they go through, and because of people who are born with diseases, they don't get listed as high as somebody who is typically healthy and then something fails, which is what Baylor's situation was. And you get different scores based on your illnesses and just your basic health stats. And they even rank you by like your community and support system. Do they have people who can help? Are they financially stable enough to take care of this organ that we're going to give them? Can they afford the medicines that they need to, keep this organ going?
And you're given a social worker. You're given a social worker, and they evaluate you. And it's a very rigorous process, but we can see why the process.
And a very quick process as well, because
very quick.
Her life was on the line as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And as far as like the phone call that we received, it was late. It was like 11:30, and Baylor had kind of had like a rough day that day. So she was just sleeping a whole lot. And so we were actually asleep, which I felt like was very rare. But I got a phone call, and I was like, who is this? But I knew it was a Houston number, so of course I answer it. And it wasn't our actual liver transplant coordinator. It was the on-call at the time. And she's like, I just want to let you know that there's a potential liver available, and we still have to do testing on it, so it might not be a match for you guys, but I just want you to know that it is a potential. And if so, then surgery's tomorrow at 1 o'clock. And I was like, holy cow. Like, it was like just happened so fast. I mean, obviously, like, you can't just leave an organ out for days or whatever, but it was just, they had told us that day or the day before that, like, okay, we're getting to the point where Baylor needs a liver transplant. Like, we need one right now in order for her to be healed. And it was like the very next day, and we got a phone call, and it was like, this is crazy. Like, we didn't even have to wait 24 hours until it was like critical for them to get an offer. And
I mean, I believe there was even, did we have a call or two that was a possible, and then that kind of fell through. So this third call,
it was one.
Or one call.
She was sick, but they kind of thought at the time like she was starting to repair herself. And so they said, we did get a call that there is a liver, but we're not going to give it to Baylor because she's okay for right now. And then later they said, no, okay, we need an organ. So that's what.
And they waited because that liver can actually regenerate itself. So, that's something I didn't know. And so that was a good thing at the time because, your liver can kind of fight for itself for a while.
Right. Yeah. How about, again, this is more my lack of understanding, but how long does a liver, or how long does it need to be in time before before that's donating? Is there a certain amount of time? Can they freeze it? Or does it have to be within 24 hours? How does that work?
I don't think they ever told us that, or we've ever come across that that information per se. But they've always said that, as soon as one becomes available, we run tests on it, and then we'll run tests on Baylor, and if it's compatible, they'll start preparing Baylor before the actual even gets there. And then once it gets there, they'll even do another set of tests to make sure that it's going to be compatible.
We did find out though, like the hospital has to be in possession of like a person in order to donate an organ. So like if you die in a car crash or something and nobody is there, then your potential to donate an organ is very slim. So typically it's the hospital has to like understand how you died, or you have to die while you're at the hospital.
Right. They're in the process of trying to save.
Okay.
I don't know why that is what it is.
And
But
does the liver need to be a similar age or similar size as the recipient?
so
No.
Baylor received a split transplant, and because of her acute liver failure and because she is a toddler, our Dr. Palais here told us, like, your best options are to go somewhere else, because in Oklahoma they only allow full liver transplants, so whole liver transplants. So your options for a toddler-sized liver are very slim, whereas if you go somewhere else and they do split livers, it could be an adult, or it could be a teenager, or it could be like, so she received a split transplant. So there's 2 lobes of your liver, and basically I think they usually use the left side if they do a split. So she received a portion of somebody else's who was larger than her. And then her liver, her new liver, was sort of kind of long shaped when they did her original sonogram. And what he was saying about livers can rejuvenate themselves. They're the only organ that can regrow, like, on its own. And so even within 2 weeks of us being transplanted, and then they do like a checkup sonogram to make sure that things are flowing properly, veins, etc., are all flowing. Her liver had already grown from this long, like, hot dog-ish shape to a full-sized liver that her body needed. Like,
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, that's truly amazing and miraculous too, just to understand how our bodies are, and that, you know, this one organ that is failing her, and it has a capability to rejuvenate itself, and that her liver is now functioning and working as it should. And it's just truly a miracle, and giving glory to God, really, as you did in your story, that this liver was God sent. And oh, that's just amazing to hear that. Do you know anything about the person that had donated, or is that information that can be found out?
We have not received any information about the particular donor. They encourage everybody who received the transplant to reach out to the donor family. So, you know, we've drafted a letter, we've sent it to them, but we haven't heard back from them. And we understand, you know, they're also grieving because they too have lost someone. And we fully understood that from talking to one of our neighbors, and he kind of explained the process, because he lost his son, and he actually donated his son's organs. And so we kind of learned the process that way. And so, again, just an example of that is another godsend because of it. So we're just patiently waiting. We hope to hear from them at some point. We will love to hear from them, you know, welcome them into our family. But we also understand if it doesn't happen, then, you know, we're okay with that also.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, the beauty is your daughter is doing so wonderfully today and thriving, and it is thanks to this other family who was willing to donate, and hopefully they will get to learn and understand. But as you said, it's you can respect their situation too. Well, I love what you wrote, Alyssa. You said that what I love about God is that he does have quite a sense of humor. He knew that if she was healed completely on her own, we would go back to living life on our own, and that he healed her through organ donation and the instability of post-transplant life in order to keep us close to him for the remainder of our lives. And this, I think, is one of my favorite parts of your story, because it really shows the maturity and the perspective that you have in it, and that even as we pray and God answers our prayers, and sometimes he answers them in ways that we don't expect or don't think, but this is a way that you can see how God is keeping you close to himself, and I think that's just so beautiful. But what I want to ask is, what helped you draw close to God during this time, when sometimes during moments of tragedy or difficulty, it can be easy to blame God, or it can be easy to become bitter. But what is it in your situation, your story, that you chose to draw close to God?
I think part of it was out of fear. Like, we believe in God. We know that God can heal. We know that He does heal. And I wanted that for my daughter also.
Yeah.
And so, like, really my only choice was I can either be really upset and angry, or I can do something positive. And being angry and bitter and afraid often happened, like, within our day. But it was like, it was so much more comforting to spend my moments in prayer and with God. And, like, there were days literally where, like, we would pray something, and then within moments God would answer it. Like, one day we were like, man, I'm really hungry. Like, just talking out loud, like, we should probably eat today. Like, because that's just kind of how it was sometimes. But, and then we would get a call like, hey, somebody left you a gift card at the restaurant downstairs. And we're like, it's so bizarre. And so I think keeping in line with God and continually asking requests from Him literally lined our steps, and it made it so much easier to stay there and to stay mentally focused and to stay, like, in Christ than it was to be worried and be anxious and be fearful. Which is weird to say, because you're like, your daughter is dying. But, like, a lot of days, like, we were pretty good, like, emotionally. Like, looking back, I'm like, kind of handled this really well. Like, it's amazing how much strength you can find in Christ. You're, like, asking for it, you know?
Yeah. That reminds me of again, your support system as well, that was supporting you, praying for you, encouraging you. And it really is, it's a beautiful testimony to your faith and to God as well, and what He does in our lives. And so thank you for being so open to share your faith as well and your journey in that. Now after the transplant, you have post-transplant life. And you mentioned you have to be careful with germs and things like that. But is there a time when she will be able to live without concern or risk for her health? No. Okay.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, she's always going to be on a immune suppressant, so it's always going to lower her immune system. So, you know, closer to, the farther you get away from transplant, you know, she gets stronger, but she's always going to have a weakened immune system because of the medicine she takes, so that her body doesn't reject the liver. But as you get older, she's able to understand her own risks. She's able to understand, hey, you know, I can't eat these type of foods. I can't drink these type of drinks. I can't go to these type of places, you know, like lakes, and because lakes aren't moving bodies of water, they're still, so they have lots of you know, dirty stuff in them. So things like that, you know, the farther you get away from transplant, it makes it a little easier, but there's always that risk that she'll always be just slightly different and be able not to do the same things that her brother can do.
Like, we met somebody through the local, I believe, kidney and something, I can't remember. She had two, but she actually missed out on an event that we had coordinated with her because she had to be hospitalized for like 5 days because of a cold. So what we can, like, fight on a normal basis, or, you know, it doesn't really interfere with our lives. People who are immune suppressed, it's pretty serious, and
they can't take a lot of medications because it also affects the medicine that they must take. So, so it's definitely a struggle. We're still learning it. But I can also say
that gives us a little more glimpse into what it's like, really, with post-transplant life. And
we've definitely been extremely lucky. She hasn't been as sick as she's supposed to be. So we've definitely been blessed in that area.
Yeah, well, you said as well that the doctors were even amazed at how her body was fighting, even in the beginning, with her previous liver. So she's a fighter, and a warrior. So we see that in her already. Yeah. Now, you said that you have been miraculously changed in this process and that your lives have been improved, and you wrote a little bit about that. But is there other pieces of advice or such that you want to give to other families, or to share just how your life has been changed in this, just to inspire other families as well? How have you been changed in this process?
Well, for myself, I would just highly suggest that they embrace the moments. I know that kind of sounds cliche, but just embrace the moments that you do have, and not only with just your kids, but just with everyone. I mean, because you never know. One day you're healthy, the next day you're not healthy. So whoever you come in contact with, just embrace the moment. Love on them; they'll love on you back. Yeah, just really embrace the moment, just because you don't know what tomorrow brings.
Yeah, that's good. It's so true. Yeah. How about you, Alyssa?
Yeah. For me, I think the biggest lesson in all of this was to remain steadfast, and um, no prayer request is too small for God. Prior to transplant, like, we were struggling as a couple. We just weren't together mentally, emotionally. We just weren't there. And then all of this happened, and it was like, you don't have a choice but to come together, and and then coming together back in Christ, and pouring into each other, and having him pray over us and pray over me, and just being totally uplifting and fully faith-filled, like rejuvenating your marriage that way. It was awesome. And I guess my encouragement is to, once you feel yourself getting lukewarm, or you feel a struggle or a tension or whatever, instead of coming back in anger and guilt and resentment, to choose Christ. And it's not easy for whatsoever to put yourself kind of last in that kind of situation, but it works. So I guess that's my bit of encouragement on that part.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I think that about, unless there's any other thoughts that you have, one thought that I had was just the post-transplant, or the community that you have now, because I know you said you've been quite involved with, and I'm not sure what you call it, but there's a community for people that have had transplants. And so what does that community look like today, and what support does that offer you?
So, like, on Facebook, there's a bunch of transplant support groups, and we're a part of a few different liver ones. We have like a local one that's local to the hospital that she was transplanted at, and then there's kind of like a regional one of anyone who, mostly United States, is going through or waiting for or just had a transplant. And so it's nice because you just get to hear all stories about what people have been through, and hey, when this happened to you, what was the process, or how did you deal with it?
Helps you ask while you're there, because you have no idea what to ask the doctors when it's going on. So when you have that support group, you can say, hey, this is kind of what's happening to my daughter, and different people will say, well, hey, ask the doctor about this, or ask the doctor about that. And it just makes you feel a little at ease to know that, hey, this is possibly what's going on, and I can actually go to the doctor with some relevant information versus just hearing medical lingo all day. So for those people who are actually going through the process, it's very comforting. And for us who are post-transplant, we're able to ask, small questions like, hey, she's running a fever. Would you go into the doctor, or, what would you suggest, or what did you guys do in this situation? So that's very comforting also in itself, because you've been in a hospital so long, you try to avoid going back if possible. And so every little cough or runny nose or fever, you automatically think, are we going back for a long time? But with that support group, you're able to find out, hey, maybe she just has a cold, or maybe something's coming up, just take her in to be safe, and things like that. So the support group is really, really beneficial. So I would highly suggest anyone who's going through a transplant or post-transplant to definitely join one to get into community.
And even smaller things like when it was the end of summer and all the moms are on there and they're like, oh, who's ready to file their, what is it called, 504?
Yeah.
The 504 plans with your school, which is like a medical plan, or I don't know what other terms it's
similar
called.
to an IEP, but it's for medical reasons. So if Baylor, when she gets into school, she'll file one, and with that plan, she won't be able to be penalized for missing school due to being hospitalized or any severe illness or anything like that. With that plan, she can, if the school has the capability for it, she can be put into a smaller classroom. This is basically just a plan to inform her teachers and administrators, what's going on with her. So if she's absent, they kind of have an idea why. It's basically just a really good type of insurance plan for her.
Sure. Good resources to know.
Things that we never really thought about, like a mom was saying, the school is fighting me on my son having his own nap mat, like a kindergarten class. And I was like, oh, I didn't really think about that. So like the mats that kids use every day to take their naps on, every kid uses them. So I'm like, that is kind of like, I don't think I want Baylor to share nap mats with somebody else who's like slobbering every day. I mean, and we don't think about stuff like that whatsoever. Like prior to this, like that wouldn't be an issue. But it's just small things like that that we get from these support groups that are beneficial to us, because, I mean, we're not there yet.
Right.
We're pretty protective of Baylor, as most transplant people are, but like we don't really go anywhere. Like that's why I chose to stay at home, because the daycare situations, hard to find somebody who could be fully like accommodating to her. And we also like
we didn't want to put the responsibility.
Yeah, we didn't want somebody else to have to feel responsible for her in that sense.
Yeah.
So it became easier for us to say, okay, well, I'll just stay at home with her.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot to think about and a lot to consider. And I think about how God equips us for each journey that we have. And God has clearly equipped both of you for being Baylor's parents. And though it's not easy, the life and the road that you have ahead, as you wrote in at the end, you had said you are so thankful and grateful that you're a family of 4 still, and that really is the miracle that you have Baylor with you today. And we're so thankful for you guys as well in sharing. But in closing, do you have any other thoughts or anything to share that maybe we didn't cover that you would like to share?
Me personally, I would just encourage everyone to seriously consider being an organ donor, because you just never know who you can help, how many people you can help. So I would definitely encourage everyone to at least research it. I mean, I don't want to force anyone to do it or feel guilty about it, but I would definitely encourage you to research it and figure out if that's something that you and your family can do. Because there's a lot of, I think, negative stigma about it. A lot of people think that your organs are harvested, or they're going to let you die on the way to the hospital, which that's not the case. We learned, like she said earlier, the hospital actually has to be in possession of the organ before they can actually use it. So, so I would definitely encourage everyone to be an organ donor.
Yep, that's great. Great advice. Well, how about we bring in those kids so we can meet them and say hello? And we'll bring my family in as well so you can just say hello.
They've been in the backyard jumping on the trampoline, so they're probably
They're going to be pretty excited. Our son's been running around too with little bikes here, so. You want to come say hi? You want to meet Baylor and BJ? Huh? Come here. They're going to come from outside, so they're going to have lots of energy.
Hey, you, come here. Remember we talked about the interview?
Is this BJ? Hi,
Hello.
BJ. Hello. It's so nice to meet you. You know what? I hear lots of good things about you. That you're a really great big brother. And there's Baylor. Hi,
Hello.
Baylor. This is Joel. And this is Patrick. And I'm Christina.
Hello.
It's so nice to meet you guys. Were you just jumping on the trampoline?
Yeah.
We jumping on trampoline?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How fun.
that's cool. We were racing our bikes outside. I'm exhausted. I'm super tired. I need to go sleep now.
Hi. Hi,
Hey.
Baylor. How old are you, Baylor? Are you 2? 2 years old? Wow, you are so tall for 2. And BJ, how old are you? You 5? Wow.
Cool.
So fun. What's it like being 5 years old?
Pretty fun, I guess.
Is it pretty fun? Aww. And Baylor, you are quite a strong little girl, right? You have been through a lot for one little girl, huh? Yeah.
Cheers.
Well, we are so proud of you and your whole family. And BJ, for you being a great big brother, I heard that through everything you have been so caring for your sister. Yeah. And it's so wonderful to hear. And you guys are such great examples to us and for our little Joel here. So as he grows up, he's going to learn about your story too and about your family. And we're so excited that we got to meet you guys on the video here. And maybe one day we'll get to meet you in person too. Maybe we'll come visit you. That'll be fun.
Where are you based at? I didn't even ask you that.
We're in Stockholm in Sweden.
Oh, okay.
So,
But I knew you. Okay. I kept thinking.
Yeah, but my family lives in Minnesota, so we go back. So we're Midwesterners as well at heart. So,
my mom is from Minnesota. But,
do you grew up in Minnesota?
no, my mom did. So she has family up there. So.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
Yep.
Well, I'm the reason she stayed here, so
yeah. So
I'm from Sweden.
Patrick is Swedish.
Yeah.
Yes. Great. Hi. Oh, it's so fun to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for giving us some time. Do you have any thoughts or anything to add?
I don't know what you've asked so far, so you probably asked most of it. I really enjoyed your Facebook post as well that you shared, and there's a lot of people that just connected on that, and just praising your wife. It's always a good time to do that. So
yes,
that's good to see.
Yeah,
he definitely makes it easy.
Yeah. Oh,
that's good.
Well, we look forward to continuing to follow your journey, and Baylor, you stay strong, okay? And BJ, you take care of your sister, all right?
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let you guys get back to playing, and great to meet you guys, and great to interview you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Oh, so sweet. Oh.